Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Tuesday afternoon. It's a wonderful day. Playoffs are just around the corner. Very excited for the matchups. Very excited to finally watch all basketball every single day, all day, every day. It's going to be so much fun. But that's not what we're going to be talking about in the first segment. So in the first segment, the WNBA Draft happened last night, so we are going to be covering a little bit of that, as well as talking about maybe I might go into Caitlin Clark's contract because there were a lot of outcries with how her contract was constructed, and a lot of people didn't really agree with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and just basically, excuse me, my stream is lagging for some reason, my bad. But I'm basically just going to give like a brief little summary as to like what that is and like the details behind it, maybe if I have time. And then in the second segment, we're going to be talking about Team USA and the roster, because the roster was officially finalized with one spot available. So I'm just going to be talking about like some of the players that I think would fit that role perfectly, as well as like potential scenarios that Team USA might face, since the playoffs are going to be happening and it's going to be a lot of games. And then in the third segment, since there are no games that have happened recently, I can't do my NBA recap, so we're just going to do a preview of the play-in matchups that are going to happen tonight, because there's pretty good matchups for us that pretty sure everyone's going to want to see. LeBron's going to be playing, so you guys know how I feel about LeBron. And we also have our fourth segment that I reveal at the end of every third segment, so stay in tune for the end of the third segment before I reveal that. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description and the link displayed below the ticker to get your comments recognized. The link is GSMCPodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCPodcast.net. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the WNBA Draft. So, obviously, the number one pick in the draft was Caitlin. Like, no question about it. There was not going to be a single question about who the first pick in the WNBA draft was going to be. It was clear cut that Caitlin is the best player out of this entire draft class. And this draft class as a whole, it's been compared, like, if you want to make an NBA comparison, they've compared it to the 2003 draft class that had Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, that had all of these great players. And I honestly, I feel like that's really the best comparison that you can get when you're comparing WNBA to NBA in terms of draft class, because they do have the potential to make an impact on the game, and in a very crucial time where women's sports is women's basketball in particular is sort of reaching its peak. And it could go even higher, assuming that if we all just pitch in and help, which is about her contract. So I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about her contract, a little bit about it, but she's not getting paid that much money whatsoever. I'll pull up the contract details right now, because I honestly, I haven't memorized them off the top of my head. So, Caitlin's contract, real quick. And let me just hurry up and open this. So, she signed a 4-year contract with the Fever worth $338,000, which is way, way less than what she would have been making if she would have joined the Big Three and taken up Ice Cube's offer. But obviously, this is really, this amount of money that she's making with how skilled she is, a lot of fans were sort of, they were really upset. And I find it very odd how the exact same people that are upset about her contract are the exact same people who don't watch WNBA basketball and don't help the league generate the revenue that it needs in order to even pay these athletes that much money. Because this is, and this has been a problem for like the longest time. They just can't generate revenue because nobody's interested. But now that Caitlin Clark joins, like everyone all of a sudden is interested and everyone thinks, oh, she should be paying more. Like the change is going to happen like this in an instant. Like it's incredibly hypocritical, and I really don't like it because it's like this is a process. And the women weren't going to get paid until Caitlin Clark got into the league because she draws in an audience, and that's exactly what the WNBA was missing for the past several years since it was made. They did not have a wide variety of stars to be able to market the game around, and nobody was interested in them. So Caitlin Clark joining in, now people have something to be interested about, and now the league can generate the revenue that it needs. And obviously, like, is it fair? No. But unfortunately, us, meaning the viewers and people who like basketball, we didn't do anything to help the WNBA in that situation. So it's like, it's on us, if anything. It's not really on any of the organization. It's not really on the WNBA. It's mainly on us because we don't pay attention to the games. So if you're going to take anything out of this section, go watch the women's basketball games. Go watch women's sports because I feel like they deserve it. Like, and it's just I really don't get it. I genuinely do not understand it. But let's move on with the rest of the draft. So at number 2, Cameron Brink got drafted by the LA Sparks, and she came from Stanford. She led the country in blocks this season with 3.7 per game, and she has the length, she has the mobility, and the instincts to be a great defensive player in the WNBA. Very, very valuable pick coming in from the Sparks. So next on the list is Camila Cardoso, from South Carolina. She was the center that was seen chatting with Angel Reese, and there were some questions about like what she would do. Why do the lights keep turning off in this room? There we go. It's like it's automated, so it's like it knows like whether or not there's somebody in the room. I mean, like there's clearly somebody in the room. I don't understand why the lights just keep turning off. But regardless, so she was named the most outstanding player in the Final Four earlier this month after leading South Carolina to the national championship. Obviously, she was going to be drafted high overall, and it was really difficult for a lot of the the college basketball players to get a rebound over her, especially in the finals against Iowa, where literally nobody could outboard her. And next on the list is Rickea Jackson from Tennessee. She joins the Los Angeles Sparks, drafted by the Los Angeles Sparks. So they got their center at number 2, the Sparks, and now they get one of the best wings in the class with Rickea Jackson. And she was an elite scorer at Tennessee and should only have an easier time putting the ball in the basket with the amount of spacing that she'll have in the professional level. So let's just move down upon the list of much more like, I don't want to say much more well-known players. I guess, yes, I feel like that's the right word. So at number 7 overall, Angel Reese got drafted to the Chicago Sky. So this is kind of funny because at number 3, if you remember correctly, I said Camila Cardoso got drafted by the Chicago Sky. And now here is the Chicago Sky getting Angel Reese, who is also a center/power forward that could also get rebounds and is also a very dominant force in the paint. And these two clashed heads against each other in the, they clashed heads against each other in the regular season at one point because Angel Reese was, since she plays the same position as Camila Cardoso, and since Angel Reese is a talker, they butt heads. They had their little beef, and they always seem to match up against each other. Now they're finally like on the same team, And one of my friends actually texted me earlier that this is like David Robinson and Tim Duncan on the Spurs, where nobody is going to be able to outboard either of those two on the glass. And so it's really going to be interesting how they play together, because they're always used to matching up against each other. It's going to be very interesting to see how they play together. And let's see. So I skipped through the number 5th and the 6th pick just because I wanted to get to Angel Reese and talk about that. But J.C. Sheldon from Ohio State got drafted 5th overall by the Dallas Wings, and they said the team would. The Wings said the team would be drafting for the need at this point in time, and it's no surprise that they went with Sheldon at number 5. She's an active perimeter defender with elite catch-and-shoot three-point percentage. She shoots 51% on open attempts in the NCAA season, and she will help address the biggest needs that the Wings need, like the Dallas Wings, because it's she does provide the defense and she does provide the three-point shooting. So it's what is there not to like about someone who plays defense and can shoot threes at a high clip? The Washington Mystics picked Aliyah Edwards as the 6th overall from UConn. Now, it was a really bad offseason for the Mystics. They lost Natasha Cloud in free agency and saw Elena Delle Donne step away from the game. So Edwards is a very, very good piece of the puzzle and a great addition to the team, something that they definitely needed. And she's versatile, she's efficient, she's athletic, she works hard, and 9 times out of 10, any woman that plays basketball at UConn, they're always prepared for the WNBA. UConn's women's basketball program is phenomenal. Now, going through the number 7th pick, so I already talked about Angel Reese. Number 8th pick was Alyssa Pilley from Utah. Again, forgive me if I botched that last name. She got drafted by the Minnesota Lynx. So it's the first big hinge point of the draft. We really knew what they would do, especially after trading back the pick. Pilley is an extremely talented offensive player who shot 40.4% of her attempts from downtown, including 46.7 on open catch-and-shoot looks. Now, the real question is whether she can hold up on the other side of the ball, since she is a relatively undersized forward. So that's the only question for that pick. Next, on the number 9th pick, the Dallas Wings drafted Carla Lady. Forgive me if I botched that last name. So it's not really a surprise here. The Wings went with a draft and stash pick at number 9. Bibb was extremely complimentary of Lady during a call with the media earlier this month, calling her an elite penetrator who is really strong in terms of seeing the courts. Those were her quotes. But it's unclear if she'll come over to the WNBA. But she is a talented young guard for the future. And at 10th, Layla Lacan was drafted by the Connecticut Sun, and Lacan is arguably the best guard prospect in the class. Felt like I had to sneeze for a second. My bad. But Lacan is outside of Caitlin Clark, she's arguably the best guard in the entire draft class. Again, aside from Caitlin. But no one was confident about where she would be drafted given her age and the fact that the French Federation is not super amenable to the WNBA schedule. So it's unclear when she'll come over, but at this point in the draft, it's worthwhile gambling for the Sun. And if everything works out, she could be a very, very huge steal for the Connecticut Sun. But aside from that, that's basically the top 10. If I go through all of the other picks all the way down to 36, then we will be here forever. So with that, we are out of time for this first segment, and now I will go ahead and pivot on to Team USA Basketball, where I talk about the final rosters that they've finally been updated, and there's one spot available. So I will just give my opinions on who I think is good enough to take that final spot. So I will be right back after this short break.
feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in the second segment, we are going to be discussing the Team USA roster because they have just been finalized with one roster spot available. Before I begin, though, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCPodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about Team USA and their final roster for the 2024 Paris Olympics. So I'll just rattle off all the names that have been confirmed. So they got Steph Curry, they got LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid, Devin Booker, Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, Drew Holiday, Bam Adebayo, and Anthony Davis. So these are the 11 players on the roster that have been confirmed as of right now. Obviously, this roster could be changed as the NBA playoffs progress. There's no telling if any of these players, unfortunately, get injured. And if they get injured, that might ruin their chances of being able to play 100% in the Olympics. And, obviously, this will be a huge problem because Joel Embiid, he's suffered from, in almost every single postseason game that he's been in, he's been injured. So it's a really bad track record to keep, especially when you're as dominant as Joel Embiid is. And I feel like there's a very high chance that it does happen when looking at every other player that was picked for Team USA, because most of the players that were picked for Team USA, they usually they tend to stay very healthy. And most of the time, it's why even bother with why even bother with playing in the Olympics if you're not even going to be healthy, or why even bother with playing some of the playoffs if you're not going to be healthy for the Olympics? And it's just priorities that a lot of these players, obviously they have a major priority when they look at the NBA season. So and not to mention, if any of these players make a deep playoff run, chances are they're less inclined to want to stay on the roster, if that makes sense. And it's really what's it called? It's really not good for Team USA, the fact that the playoffs are happening right around at this time, and then a lot of these players are expected to go to the Olympics immediately. And it's a lost art in NBA basketball, because back then, there would be no question on whether or not these NBA players were going to be on Team USA. Like, it's seen as a great honor to represent your country. And that honor, I feel like it's been sort of pushed to the side these recent years, because a lot of these NBA players are mainly focused on their NBA career, aside from being focused on the Olympics and USA basketball. And most of the time, and as this is sort of why in the recent years, when the USA goes to FIBA tournaments and when USA goes to Olympic tournaments, we don't send the best players that we have. And it's really frustrating, especially as a fan, because it's like, why wouldn't you want to represent your country? It really just, it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever why anyone wouldn't want to represent their country and play in the Olympics. And it's just, it really just bothers me. So there's one roster spot available for the Olympics, and depending on who gets taken, no one knows entirely for sure. So the options the best option, in my opinion, is to get Kawhi Leonard, because with the roster that I just mentioned, the only strong perimeter defender that there is on the team is Jrue Holiday. And obviously, like LeBron James and Kevin Durant, they're really good perimeter defenders. Their length makes it incredibly difficult for anyone to get any kind of bucket over them, as well as LeBron's strength and like their presence on the defense. Like, obviously, they do have defense, but they are on the older side of players when compared to the rest of Team USA's roster. So asking them to produce both offensively and defensively is a much more difficult task. Like, this is LeBron, but this isn't Miami Heat LeBron. This isn't the same LeBron that was on Team USA previously, that was dominant on both ends of the floor. It could play both ends of the floor at a high rate, 40 minutes in a game, because that's essentially what LeBron was for Team USA, and that's what a lot of those players were in 2012 and 2008. But regardless, it's really like it's a really difficult task to rely on those two players on the defensive side of the ball. And Jrue Holiday being the only perimeter defender, like competent perimeter defender, and I will say, Anthony Edwards, he is a competent perimeter defender, but it's not like he's really known for that defense. Like, they need that two-way player on the team, and it really feels like they have it at the center, no doubt about it. They do have it at the center with Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid. I mean, more so Anthony Davis than Joel Embiid on the defensive side of the ball. Also with Bam Adebayo, who is another great defensive presence for the Team USA, as well as being a good perimeter defender as well. But they need that hybrid player. So I feel like Kawhi Leonard is by far the best available option for Team USA. The problem is his knee, because I said in a previous podcast that his knee has experienced some kind of swelling, and it's going to be questionable on whether or not he'll be able to play at 100% once the postseason arrives, which is after the play-in tournament. And with all that in mind, along with the fact that Kawhi Leonard load manages and is the catalyst for load managing, it's unclear whether or not he even wants to be on Team USA's roster. So other options that are there for Kawhi, instead of Kawhi Leonard, are, in my opinion, I think Paolo Banchero would be a very good pick for Team USA, because he is that he does fill in that forward role of being able to score while at the same time being able to defend. Since he's very young in the league as well, this also gives this also gives them more of an incentive because it's like, he's young, so he'll be able to play a lot more minutes than you would LeBron or when you would KD, even though I fully expect LeBron and KD to play a lot of minutes since they are going to be in the starting lineup. Now, another player that could fit that role, like for that hybrid defender for Team USA, is Paul George, who is Kawhi Leonard's other teammate. And Paul George, he had a really, really bad leg injury when he was playing with Team USA. So this would be a pretty good bounce back story for him. Like, getting injured when he was on Team USA and then coming back to Team USA to win an Olympic gold medal. Jesus, my English is just horrible today. For the United States. That would be a really good comeback story that I would really like to see. And another option and another name that was being thrown around was Jalen Brunson. So while I am a big fan of Jalen Brunson, big fan of New York sports in general, I don't really think that's a good fit. Like, Jalen Brunson is an undersized guard who provides doesn't provide much on the defensive side of the ball. And again, he's also incredibly undersized when compared to the rest of the players that are on the roster. So I don't really think that's a worthy inclusion to bring him because it's just, okay, you're adding more offense, but where's the defense? And I really think that defense is going to be something that Team USA desperately, desperately needs. Now, looking at the rest of the players that are available, Kyrie Irving was also a name that popped up recently in these, who's going to be on Team USA, who's going to fill that role in, and with him being available for Team USA since he was on the roster before, this could be, again, it's the same story that I said where it's like they need the defense. And while he has played with Kevin Durant on Team USA before, and he has won with Kevin Durant on Team USA before, I don't think that's a worthy inclusion simply because of the lack of defense. And he's a great scorer, great player, definitely can cook basically anyone that's guarding him. But again, defense, it's desperately needed, and it's going to it could show in this Olympic tournament. But regardless, those are, let's see, are there any other players that could potentially replace or fill in that 12th spot? Not entirely sure, but not off the top of my head. I can't really think of any other player that would fill in that role better than Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. And I feel like Team USA should work on getting either of those two. Now, about Team USA, because I mentioned this before, the playoffs are rolling and they're about to start. And if one of these players makes a deep run, then chances are they're not going to want to play for the Olympic team because their team is still worried about the playoffs, and they're also and not to mention coming off of playing in an intense series and then expecting to go overseas to play basketball again and play for your country. It's a lot of these players think it's a relatively difficult task, and that's also a lot more pressure that needs to be added. That's going to be added onto them. So if any of these players make a deep playoff run, we might see some of them decommit from Team USA. But I don't think that's really going to happen this time, simply because this is supposed to be the Redeem Team 2.0. This is supposed to be the because with our embarrassing loss in the FIBA tournament and with the other embarrassing losses that Team USA has had in basketball tournaments, we need to reassert the dominance again, because again, I just said before, they just keep sending the B team or the C team instead of sending the A team, and that's something and we got to send the A team at some point. But that's basically all I have for Team USA. But with that, we are out of time for this second segment, So I will be going ahead and go into the I will go ahead into the third segment. Why is my English so bad today? I'll go ahead into the third segment where I talk about the play-in games that are going down tonight and my predictions for this game, as well as bring up something that I didn't mention in the previous podcast, which I completely overlooked. So I will be right back after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be covering the play-in games that are going to be happening tonight. They start at 7:30 on TNT, so be ready to tune in at that time. But the first matchup, we're just going to go straight into this. So the first matchup we have is the Lakers going up against the Pelicans. And this is a one-and-done game. And based on the previous matchup that the Lakers played against the Pelicans, they can definitely beat this team. And they won last game 124-108 with the healthy roster and with Anthony Davis and LeBron James playing phenomenally. So the real question in this matchup is whether or not the Lakers are going to just lose this game just so they could avoid playing the Denver Nuggets. Because, as I said previously, and as many other people have said, the Nuggets are arguably the best team in the NBA right now, and they swept the Lakers last year in the postseason, and now they're expected to play them again in the very first round, which could really put an end to the Lakers and their potential playoff hopes of making it farther than the first round and making a relatively deep playoff run. And this would be only the second time in LeBron James's career that he would lose in the first round if that matchup were to happen, because as much as I have faith in LeBron, I don't think this Lakers team is going to be enough to be able to beat the defending champs in the very, very first round of the playoffs. I just don't see that happening. So the real question is whether or not they're going to lose the first game, then play another play-in game so they could play OKC in the first round, which is a better matchup for them and is a team that they've beaten several times in the regular season. And the fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder are relatively young, that's also a big factor as to why the Lakers have a better chance of beating OKC as opposed to beating the Denver Nuggets, because the inexperience that the OKC have in the NBA playoffs is going to be, it's very, very apparent. And it's where would you go if you were the Lakers if you went up against the Denver Nuggets? Like, I really don't know where you'd go after that. Now, on the Pelicans side, they could win this game, and they face off against Denver, which I think they would lose, or they could also lose this game and then face off against OKC, which might be a better matchup for them. But I don't really see the Pelicans making a deep playoff run against any of those teams. Like, no matter who they play in the playoffs, I really don't see them making a deep run. And it might be because of, like, inexperience, and it might also be just because it's like they're the only team that I actually could see them beating in the playoffs is the Clippers. And they messed up their chances of being able to play with them, as Dallas was able to like keep winning and overtake that seed from them. So if there was any hope for them to make it past the first round, it was going up against the Clippers. But since that isn't going to happen, I really don't see it happening. Also, speaking of the Thunder, I completely forgot to do this as a segment, so give me one. So this is breaking news because Mark Daigneault, forgive me if I botched that last name, the head coach for the Oklahoma City Thunder, he had recently won Coach of the Year, and I completely forgot about that. And I forgot to mention that in like the previous segments before, as the award was brought out. But he got the Coach of the Year award for being named for leading the youngest team to the 1 seed. So when you think about it like that, I really think it's definitely like deserved. Like, he definitely deserved the Coach of the Year award, way above over every other head coach that was in the running for that award. So it was going to be between either him or the Timberwolves, in my personal opinion, but I feel like he definitely deserved that award. So I just wanted to point that out because I, again, completely forgot about that to mention it in the previous segments. And Coach of the Year, it's really like, I wouldn't say it's overlooked, but it's sort of a joke, I guess you could say, because I stopped taking the Coach of the Year award that seriously when the Raptors head coach in 2018 won Coach of the Year after being fired. So how do you win Coach of the Year if you're fired? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And like, I just always ever since then I haven't really taken the Coach of the Year award that seriously because, like, again, like, the coach literally just got fired and he was named Coach of the Year. And that isn't the only time that's happened. And it's like, how do you fire a head coach even though he won Coach of the Year? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't really take it as seriously as I take the rest of the awards. Now, back to the Pelicans and the Lakers matchup, I can't really tell who's going to win that first matchup. I really, really can't, because I have no idea if the Lakers are going to just bother losing this game so that way they could, play OKC, or if they're going to try and win this game. But regardless of whether or not they do, if they both play at 100%, I think the Lakers have the better chance of winning this matchup. Now, the next play-in game that would be played would be the Warriors going up against the Kings. So this one is a little bit complicated because I feel like the Kings, matchup-wise, they have the best matchups in order to beat the Warriors because they have De'Aaron Fox, who could provide as much of a scoring option as Steph Curry, as well as Domantas Sabonis, who also can provide a lot more scoring option for the team, as well as, help the team out in every other aspect, getting rebounds, getting assists. However, the Golden State Warriors, when you look at it the other way, they also have really good matchups because Steph Curry can battle against De'Aaron Fox, and Draymond Green would be able to, theoretically, he should be able to guard Domantas Sabonis with his elite defense. Like, if he has a very good night defending Sabonis, like, that could definitely impact the results of this game. So it's very, very tough. And not to mention the fact that the Warriors have already beaten the Kings in a playoff series. However, they did lose in Game 1, and this is a one-game series, so anything can happen. And it's really just down to which team can get hot and stay hot for the game. So I feel like the Kings, they have a much better chance of being able to do that with the assets that they have on the team, as well as the assets coming off of the bench for that team. Because Malik Monk, he's in the running for Sixth Man of the Year. And with all that in mind, like the fact that they do have that candidate, and they also have an MVP caliber player with Domantas Sabonis. Again, he's top 10 in the MVP odds, as well as De'Aaron Fox, who is a very good and very underrated point guard in this league. I could really see the Kings winning, but it's that first time that they played Golden State that's really like making me question whether or not they're ready for this kind of pressure. Now, again, this might also like flip on its heel and be like, oh, they beat us last time, so we're going to take this matchup very, very personally. And again, like anything can happen in a one-game series. So I really have no idea who's going to win in this matchup with the Warriors and the Kings, because I want to say the Kings, but the Warriors, they've beaten them before. So, and Steph Curry has owned them before. Like in Game 7, Steph Curry dropped 50 points. Like that is, on the biggest stage, he dropped that many points and was able to put the Kings away. So I feel like this play-in game, it's that same amount of it's that Game 7 pressure. And Steph Curry showed that he can meet up to those pressures and that expectation in the game. So I'm really not too sure. Now, depending on who moves on after winning, so let's say the Kings move on, and let's say their next matchup would be the Pelicans. Now, who would win in that matchup? I think the Kings would win in that matchup against the Pelicans. They also have the matchups. They have the lineup that they need. They have a point guard. CJ McCollum is also a relatively good guard. De'Aaron Fox and CJ can match in points. So Sabonis might be able to hold Zion to a little bit of scoring while at the same time producing the exact same amount of scoring and assists and all that other production that he brings to the table. But the Pelicans, now that they have, I think it's really going to be down to how well Brandon Ingram plays, because Brandon Ingram just came back from an injury, and he's a very difficult defender to guard with his length. So assuming that if he has a good game, and it's pretty likely that he does, then the Kings might not have enough to be able to combat that. Now, if the Kings go up against the Lakers in the next, let's say the Pelicans win and then the Lakers lose, if they match up against the Lakers, I feel like they're going to actually win against the Lakers, because Sabonis' record against Anthony Davis, he has never lost a game against Anthony Davis. So this is sort of the risk with the Lakers and losing in that first game of the play-in, because they risk playing the Kings, who have constantly beaten them in the regular season every single time. I don't understand what it is with the Kings, but they literally turn into a different animal when they go against LeBron. De'Aaron Fox always drops 40 points when he goes up against LeBron. Sabonis always beats Anthony Davis. And it's a lot of these things and a lot of these scenarios that are going to play into this game. And it's like, I really don't think that, it might be superstitious. You might call it superstition, but it's going to be really tough for me to pick the Lakers to win that game if they do go up against the Kings. And now, if let's say the Warriors win and the Warriors go up against the Pelicans, now I think that's really, really tough, because I think Draymond Green should be able to withhold Zion. Like, if Sabonis can't do it, then I think Draymond Green can definitely. He has the strength to be able to hold Zion for, minimal production. but it would really be down to the rest of the Golden State Warriors team and how they play offensively. And obviously, Draymond Green's defense can slow down the offense of the Pelicans, thus allowing them to win in the end. Now, if they go up against the Lakers, however, I don't think they're going to beat the Lakers, because the Lakers have shown that they can, and LeBron James has shown that he can beat Steph Curry on an even playing field no matter what. And not to mention the fact that the last time the Warriors played against the Lakers, it took them a record-breaking performance it took them almost a record-breaking performance from their team, as well as Anthony Davis being out of the game, just for them to win that game. And you're not going to get that kind of performance every single night, because they tied third for their franchise record in total threes made. And obviously, it's really difficult for a team to shoot that consistently, especially when all the pressure is on you in the play-in tournament. So that could play into effect. So I don't really see them winning against the Lakers, but those are the matchups that I have for the play-in games tonight, as well as my predictions to what I think would happen going forward. So with that, we are out of time for this third segment. So now I will be going into the fourth segment, where I talk about playoff pressure and players and teams and coaches who are going to have the most pressure going into this postseason. So I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to talk about some of the teams, some of the players, some of the coaches who are going to experience the most pressure in this in these year's playoffs, So it's going to be mainly the players, obviously, but there is one coach in that list that I'm sure you guys know exactly who he is, but we're gonna go off. This was also inspired by Green, the list. It's called the Green List, which was a list that they made on First Take. So I'm not entirely sure if it was on First Take or not. I just know that Green made this list. So Greeny, according to this is the list according to Greeny. Jesus, my English is horrible today. Good Lord. But regardless, I'm going to give my 2 cents on the list, and because I agree with this list completely. I don't think there's a single thing wrong with this list in terms of who has the most pressure. So at 5th, we have to go with Jalen Brunson. And he has Jalen Brunson at 5th. I 100% agree with him, because as the best player on the New York Knicks, you have ultimate playoff pressure by default. The Knicks in the playoffs, they are notorious for constantly losing games that they should win, losing series that they should win, not being able to live up to the hype. And on top of that, the media also, if they don't play well, the media is going to ridicule and insult them, similar to how Philly insulted Ben Simmons in the playoffs. They're going to be doing the same thing to Brunson if Brunson doesn't perform well in this postseason. So as a New York Knick and as the best player on the New York Knicks, you automatically have that playoff pressure to perform. Why do the lights keep going out when I'm clearly in the room? Regardless, he is the he has the most pressure on that entire Knicks roster, and it's really, really it's a difficult burden to bear. So the next players on this list are the Clippers stars. Now, again, this is another instance of a team that is notorious for losing series that they should win, and having good enough teams to be able to make a deep run, but ultimately coming up short. And Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have not lived up to the hype at all on the Los Angeles Clippers in terms of the playoff success. They started out blowing a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets. Then in the next year, they actually made it farther into the playoffs without Kawhi Leonard. And then in the next year, they lose to the Phoenix Suns in the first round. So this team has been relatively disappointing. And the big tandem of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who were literally compared to Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen being the best two-way duo in the league, has not lived up to that hype whatsoever. And obviously, as a Clipper, you're going to have that kind of pressure because the Clippers, they're notorious for blowing leads. They're notorious for playing bad in the postseason. And it's, when are they going to get over that hump and finally make the finals? This should be the year for them. And, I completely forgot to mention Harden. James Harden is he's another one of the stars on the Clippers who they just recently got. And he's also had playoff bugaboos. He is one of the worst postseason performers in NBA history. Both the eye test and the stats show this. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I can't deny what I see. And every single year I see him and his team lose when the lights shine the brightest. And he's usually the culprit behind it with his lackluster performances. And the thing is, it's every single season with him. And it's like it's never going to end. It's a bugaboo. It's almost a curse in a sense. And another player that's also cursed in the playoffs is Russell Westbrook. Ever since Kevin Durant has left, he's had minimal success in the playoffs, barely any. And the only time he actually made it out of the first round was when he was on Houston, when he had James Harden there to help him, and the ridiculous spacing on the small ball Houston lineup. But since Kevin Durant left, he's underperformed in the first round several times, got outplayed by Ricky Rubio in the playoffs. I mean, seriously, Ricky Rubio? He's a really good player, Ricky Rubio, but Russell Westbrook, coming off of his MVP season, was not on the same level as Ricky Rubio. Ricky Rubio wasn't on that level. As much as I respect Ricky Rubio and as much as I think he's a great basketball player, he was not at that MVP caliber type player in the NBA, like how Russ was. And he's had the pieces that he needs to succeed, and it's just he doesn't get it done. And so those guys are going to experience a lot of pressure in the playoffs. Now, number 3 is Kevin Durant. Now, this is probably this is going to be a little bit controversial because a lot of people are like, oh, Kevin Durant, he already has his rings. Yeah, well, in my opinion, those rings do not count. And he knows that those rings, according to the media, that those rings are seen as weak. He knows it. And the story behind him is he left the super team with Golden State, tried to form another super team in Brooklyn, but then that failed due to injuries and Kyrie being a quack. Then then when the team is starting to get a little worse and it's looking dim, he abandons the Nets, straight up abandons them because, Kyrie requested a trade, and then goes ahead and joins another super team with Phoenix where they're expected to win it all, but then they don't, because they come up short. And honestly, I've said this previously, if you take out Kevin Durant's 2 rings with Golden State, what has he done in the playoffs other than disappoint and blow leads and blow games that he should have won? He's done it numerous times. Blew a 3-1 lead to Golden State when he was on OKC, lost in the first round several of the times, lost to opponents that are aren't supposed to be on the same level as OKC was at the time. And, he lost to the finals against LeBron James in 2013. And it's been, not to mention Brooklyn, the time in Brooklyn, lost in the second round, but that wasn't really his fault because everybody else was injured. But then the next year, they lost to the Boston Celtics in the first round in just 4 games, with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving shooting like 0 for 17 at one point in the game, literally missing 17 straight shots. It was so disappointing. Not to mention when he played with Phoenix in his second year with not in his second year, excuse me. When he played on Phoenix, they got blown out in the final game when they played against Denver at home. And this is obviously this is a bugaboo for Kevin Durant, and he has that pressure. He has to win a legitimate ring. He has to win a legitimate title. Otherwise, there's really not much that needs to be said other than the fact that, his rings are, in my opinion, illegitimate, even though, he's won them. But it's he took the easy way to get them. And you can't be that guy when you're with those guys. And I'm sure we all can agree on that. Now, second on this list is going to be Doc Rivers. Now, that was the coach that I said that you guys would probably know exactly who I was talking about. And Doc Rivers is going to be under the most pressure in this playoff series against the Pacers, especially with Giannis potentially missing the first few games of the playoff series. And without Giannis, I don't really think the Bucks have any kind of chance in beating the Pacers. And with Doc Rivers as their coach, even less of a chance, because I said this before, say it again, Doc Rivers does not make the adjustments necessary for the team to win. So I don't know if he's going to have enough, I don't know if he's even going to have adjustments for playing without Giannis in the rotation for these playoffs. So I really, my faith in the Bucks is at an all-time low right now for winning this series, and I just, this is a legacy series for Doc Rivers. It's a make or break for him, because I have a feeling if he loses this playoff series, I think he's done as Milwaukee's head coach. There's just no way that he's going to be Milwaukee's coach after this year if he ends up losing. And last but certainly not least, the entire roster of the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics, they definitely have the most pressure out of anyone in this postseason. They just finished in the Eastern Conference with the best record. They got 60 wins, the only team with 60 wins in the regular season. They're by far the best team in the Eastern Conference, and they've been this dominant for several years. But they have no hardware to show for it. They have no championship to show for it. It's every single year with the Boston Celtics, they end up losing the game that matters most. It always has happened. They matched up in the bubble. They matched up against the Miami Heat. They lost there. Not even, you know what, why don't we not even start at the bubble? Let's start in 2018 when they literally just drafted Jason Tatum and, they had Kyrie Irving. It wasn't really expected that they'd make it that far, but they made it relatively far enough, and they started out the series against Cleveland 2-0. Now, Boston has never lost a playoff series when they're up 2-0 in the series until 2018 when LeBron James showed up and just completely destroyed them in the playoffs. And that was the first time that that's ever happened in Boston Celtics history. Then in the next year, they made it nowhere near as far as they did previously with Kyrie Irving in the roster. They actually played better without Kyrie than they did with Kyrie. And that was also very, very disappointing because, once they added Kyrie and once they had a healthy Kyrie, everyone assumed that, oh my God, these guys made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last time without Kyrie Irving, who was supposed to be their best player. Now they have Kyrie Irving. Now it's only right that they make it to the finals. Nope, they lose in the semifinals against the what team did they? I don't remember exactly what team they played, but they did lose in the second round. And then the next year, when Kyrie Irving left to go play for Brooklyn, and it was a COVID year because they forced them to go into the bubble. They matched up against the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals again, and they lost to, and nobody really thought that the Miami Heat were going to make this kind of run. Everyone expected the Celtics to come out winning, but they ended up losing to that Miami Heat team. Then, afterwards, they played the Brooklyn Nets, a healthy Brooklyn Nets, and they lost in the first round. Then, they played the Brooklyn Nets again, and they beat them this time, and then they made it farther than they ever have, making it all the way to the NBA Finals, where they lose to Golden State. And Jason Tatum did not play well at all in that series, even though he played better than Kobe Bryant in his first playoff series. But he was held accountable for that loss. And then afterwards, they make it far again, but this time they fall completely short and they lose and then they just keep, this is just a trend, as you can see. They just keep losing, they keep losing in series where they are the favorites and they should win. Now that they have 60 wins, there is zero excuse for them to not make it to the finals. With how dominant they've been in the Eastern Conference, there is zero excuse to making the NBA Finals. Their floor, the floor for the Celtics, is a finals appearance, and their ceiling is a championship. So they are under the most ridiculous pressure out of everybody on this list. So that's basically all I have to say for this segment, and that's basically since this is the fourth segment, that's basically the end. So we are running out of time as well. So thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And do not forget to use the link in the description or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment to tip and donate to get your comments recognized. Once again, the link is GSMCPodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And that will do it. That is the end of the fourth segment. I am your host, Nelson. Thank you once again. And as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to